Hello, and welcome to the Bewarecast. In today's video, we'll be looking at some more species from Dougal Dixon's 1990 speculative zoology book, After Man. Last time we covered the species in alphabetical order, from A to F, and so in part 2 we'll be continuing on from there and covering G through N. But before we get started, I'd like to ask that you please hit the like button as it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and if you end up enjoying this video, then please hit the subscribe button and bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Thank you. The Gademot, a colourful corvid from the Eurasian tundra descended from the Eurasian magpie. It is a notable avian predator of the Meeing, along with the booty bird. It retains much of its original body shape and coloration, but has a hooked beak and pointed wings like a skua. In summer, it feeds on rodents and smaller birds in the tundra, but spends its winters in the coniferous forests to the south as a scavenger. Its survival in the cold north is due in no small part to the fact that it is a brood parasite, like with many cuckoos, laying its eggs in the nests of other birds to be incubated and hatched by them. In this way, it conserves the energy it would otherwise use in nest building and brood rearing, at the expense, however, of the ducks and waders on whose nests the eggs are laid. The Ghoul, a large, scavenging, strictly carnivorous herpestine mongoose that is the most efficient scavenger of the African tropical grasslands. Its head and neck are almost totally devoid of hair, allowing it to reach inside the body cavities of carcasses without its coat becoming fouled. Its canine teeth are particularly huge and are capable of crushing most bones to get at the marrow. Ghouls live in packs of about a dozen and have developed an almost symbiotic relationship with a species of carnivorous termite. This termite builds its mound with a horizontal shelf projecting out all round, a metre or so above the ground. The shelf provides shelter from the fierce midday sun, where the ghoul can bring bones and other tough parts of its meal to chew at leisure. The termites feed on the scraps of carrion that the ghoul invariably leaves scattered around the mound, thus benefiting from the relationship. The giant pitter, a strange pitter from the forest floor of African tropical forests. A large number of birds inhabit the tropical forest regions of the world. The most remarkable, from the point of view of social behaviour, is the giant pitter. The male pitter, unusually for a bird, is about 3 times the size of the female, and each year takes a harem of 3 or 4 females. Each female builds a separate nest in the same vicinity and relies on the male to provide her with food during the breeding season. The male also provides protection from predators, as well as defending the harem against rivals. The gianela, a large ground sloth-like macropodid that lives in the undergrowth of tropical forests in Australia. It is the largest animal of the Australian forest, and in fact the largest animal found in any of the world's tropical forests. This animal has evolved from the plains-dwelling kangaroos and wallabies that were common when much of the continent was semi-arid grassland, and betrays its ancestry by its upright stance and peculiar loping motion. The gianela is so large that it seems at first sight ill-adapted to life in the confined conditions of the tropical forest floor. However, its great height does give it the advantage that it can feed on leaves and shoots that are well out of reach of other forest inhabitants, and its bulk means that shrubs and small trees do not impede it. As the gianela crashes through the thickets, it leaves behind well-marked trails which, until they are reclaimed by the natural growth of the forest, are used as trackways by smaller animals such as the posset. The growth, a small hornhead frequently found grazing on grassy south-facing slopes of the African European mountains. It lives in small herds of 4 or 5 females, guarded jealously by a male. The most apparent difference between males and females is in their horn structure. The males have flat, bony, plate-like horns, which they use to buffet one another in their frequent fights for herd dominance. The female's pointed, pyramidal horns are much more deadly and are used to defend themselves and their young against predators. While the herd grazes, the male normally stands guard, watching for signs of danger. When he sees an intruder, the male signals by erecting his long, flag-like tail, and the herd makes for their nearby shelter. The growth's principal enemy is the shurak. In winter, when the snows come, herbivores such as the growths move to lower levels of the mountain altitudes to find shelter and grazing. The carnivorous animals, dependent on them for food, closely follow the herds on their seasonal migrations. The grobit, a rabbit-like pedicid descended from spring hares adapted to move across rocky terrain. This rodent is about 60 centimeters long excluding the tail, and has hooves developed on its third and fourth digits, enabling it to run about the craggy landscape of the rocky desert. The second and fifth digits on its front feet have small claws that almost touch the hooves when the foot is bent, allowing the grobit to grasp and pull down branches and feed on them. The grobit lives in packs all over the rocky desert zones of Africa and Asia. The gurath, a large jaguar-like herpestine mongoose that is the foremost predator of the South American tropical forest. Its ancestor, the small Asian mongoose, was introduced by humans to the then offshore Caribbean islands at the north of the continent, where it became a pest and overran them. When the islands became fused to the mainland, the small Asian mongoose spread southwards and developed into its present jaguar-like form. Its chief prey is the tapimus. The hawk boa, a boa bird from the tropical forest undergrowth of Australia. It is descended from the satin boa bird. Australian boa birds have always been noted for the fantastic structures built by the male for the purpose of wooing a female. The hawk boa is no exception. The boa itself is quite a modest affair, housing the permanent nest and a small altar-like structure at the entrance. While the female incubates the eggs, the male, a rather hawk-like bird, catches a small mammal or reptile and sets it on the altar. The offering is never eaten, but serves as a bait to attract flies, which are then caught by the female and fed to the male to ensure his continuing attention during the long incubation period. Once the eggs have hatched, the chicks are fed on the fly larvae that have developed in the rotting carrion. The hiri, an arboreal creature descended from the Tasmanian devil. Lying in wait on a low branch, it dangles its strong, prehensile, opossum-like tail down like an innocent vine. When some unsuspecting prey animal trots by, the hiri seizes it swiftly with its tail and strangles it. The herin, a large, predatory, carnivorous, almost feline-like primate from the tropical grasslands of Africa. It leads a totally ground-dwelling carnivorous mode of life. Lying in the long grass, where it is camouflaged by its stripes and mane, it waits for its chief prey, the gigantelopes, namely tropical gigantelopes. As they pass by, the herin leaps out onto the back or neck of its quarry, using its sickle-like claws to rip deep wounds around the neck and throat. Severely wounded, the gigantelope soon dies, providing a meal for the whole herin family group. As predators such as the herin eat only the softer tissues and muscles of a gigantelope's belly, there is always plenty of meat left for the scavengers, such as raboons, gulls, and birds of prey. The kiffa, a gibbon-like Cercopithecine old-world monkey from the tropical forests of Asia, whose defense against the striga, its most important predator, is based on its social organization. It lives in tribes of up to 20 individuals and builds defensive citadels in the boughs of trees. These large hollow nests, woven from branches and creepers and roofed with a rain-proof thatch of leaves, have several entrances, usually situated where the main branches of the tree thrust through the structure. Most of the work of food gathering and building is carried out by females and young males. The adult males remain behind to defend the citadel and have developed a unique set of features to carry out their highly specialized role. Horny armor over the face and chest, and vicious claws on the thumb and forefinger. It is not unknown for a female to taunt a passing striger and allow herself to be pursued back to the citadel, dashing to safety while the striger finds its way barred by a powerful male capable of disemboweling it with a swipe from its terrible claws. This apparently senseless behaviour, however, provides the colony with fresh meat, a welcome supplement to their mostly vegetarian diets of roots and berries. Only young and inexperienced strigers are caught this way. The Khilla, a large coyote jackal-like white-toothed shrew from the deserts of Asia and Africa. In the deserts, large predators are not common, and very few meat-eating mammals of any description are found. The Khilla, however, is one of the few. Standing about 60 centimeters high at the shoulder, it is largely nocturnal and spends most of the day hidden in a network of burrows excavated in soft sand. At night, it hunts smaller mammals and obtains most of the water it needs from the moisture contained in their flesh. The Criskin, a common predatory New World ground cuckoo from the deserts of South America in the Postomic period, 50 million AD. Most desert animals are sandy yellow in colour to blend in with their surroundings and have white undersurfaces that counteract the effects of shade and give them a two-dimensional appearance. That this colour scheme is the result of evolutionary pressure is a belief supported by the darker appearance of animals found on black-grey lava areas and the almost white forms of the same animals found in salt pan regions. Animals that are not camouflaged are predominantly black. Predatory birds, such as the Criskin, reptiles, and the most poisonous and unpalatable arthropods, fall into this category. The colour resemblance may be due to a form of mimicry, in which, for some reason, black is an advantageous colour for certain predators, and all others adopt the same colour to derive some similar benefit. The Leaping Devil, a North American desert-dwelling red-toothed shrew with carnivorous habits. It is one of the spitting featherfoot's chief predators and has a morphology and physiology similar to the featherfoot and to the other small desert rodents on which it preys. The Lesser Ptarmigan, a ptarmigan descended from the rock ptarmigan from the northern hemisphere tundra that can make homes in old meeching fortresses. The old fortresses that have been abandoned by meeching colonies provide homes for several of the tundra's other inhabitants. The lesser ptarmigan nests exclusively in old meeching burrows and is sometimes found cohabiting with the meechings themselves, usually in cases where part of the population has already migrated. The Longarmed Zida, a black spider monkey-like colobine old world monkey from the treetop canopy of the African tropical forests. Birds of prey, such as eagles and hawks, are the important predators of the treetops, as they are in any other habitat. The tree-living mammals of these regions must be swift enough to elude them, and also to escape from tree-climbing predators coming up from below. The mammals that accomplish this best are the primates. The Longarmed Zida has taken these specializations to the extreme and has developed long arms and legs, fingers and toes, so that it can brachiate or swing its tiny globular body through the branches of the trees at high speed. It has also evolved a prehensile tail, just as its South American cousins, the now extinct New World monkeys, did in the first half of the Cenozoic. Its tail, however, is not used for locomotion, but only for hanging from when resting or asleep. The Longlegged Quail, a large New World quail from the deserts of North America. Small mammals and reptiles of the desert, like the desert spickle and the fin lizard, are preyed on by ground-dwelling birds such as the long-legged quail. Its eggs, which are laid in sand scrapes in sheltered spots beneath bushes or overhanging rocks, are sat on continuously to protect them from the extremes of heat and cold that are typical of the desert climate's daily temperature range. The breeding cycle of this and many other desert birds is dependent on the rainy season, the birds nesting as soon as the first spring rains appear and continuing as long as the wet season lasts. In unusually dry years, no breeding takes place. The Longnecked Dipper, a semi-aquatic, partly flightless dipper descended from the white-throated dipper living near the temperate rivers of Europe. Although there are many examples of flightless birds in the posthomic period, the long-necked dipper is the only bird that spends part of its life with the capacity for flight and the rest flightless. During its early life, the bird develops wings in the normal way, but once it has migrated away from its natal nesting site, it becomes totally earthbound and pursues a purely terrestrial, semi-aquatic existence. Its wings, now no longer necessary, lose their power and gradually atrophy. The Longnecked Yipper, a long-necked llama-like antilopine bovid from the tropical grasslands of Lemuria. While other local herbivores like valuefants and snorks feed on low-level vegetation, the upper layers of vegetation are exploited by the long-necked yipper, which can reach the leaves and young shoots of the savanna trees. The Loti, a nocturnal, temperate woodland-dwelling leporid from Eurasia, descended from the common rabbit and is preyed upon by nocturnal birds of prey. The Loties live in direct competition with the ancient groups of small rodents, the mice, rats and voles. In some areas, the Loties have replaced the rodents completely, whereas in other parts of the woodlands, where the conditions particularly favour them, the rodents have remained successful. The Loties resemble the small rodents in many aspects, particularly in size, but their rabbit ancestry is obviously displayed in the shape of the head and tail. They feed mostly at night, nesting during the day in crevices among tree roots or in holes in the ground. The Matriarch Tinu, an odd tinamine tinamou from the tropical forests of South America. It is one of the strangest birds of these regions, with a peculiar sexual dimorphism. Females look like ordinary tinamous, while males are smaller, flightless and hummingbird-like. Its breeding method is similar to that of some species of anglerfish. The female of the species is a ground-living bird, resembling a typical-looking tinamou, very much larger than the male, whom she carries around on her back. The male's wings and digestive system are degenerate, and he is entirely parasitic on the female, sucking her blood through his needle-shaped beak. The male's only biological function is to provide sperm during mating. This relationship arises from the species' low population density, which makes it an advantage for each female to have a mate constantly available, rather than to search for one each breeding season. The Meeing, a woodchuck-like creature descended from the lemming, living in the northern hemisphere tundra. As the constantly frozen ground of the tundra makes digging through the earth impossible, all small burrowing rodents found in the tundra are snow tunnelers. One tunneler, in particular, the Meeing, similar to the ancient lemming from which it may be descended, has a very considerable effect on the ecology of the area. A colony of Meetings may be started by as few as 3 or 4 individuals. They breed profusely, and as their numbers grow, they build a fortress of matted vegetable material to protect them from the frosts and snows. The interior of the fortress is very complex and consists of a network of passages and tiny chambers, one for each individual. The Mud-Gulper, a large semi-aquatic hippopotamus-like animal that is the largest swimming mammal of the African tropical forest swamplands. Although it is derived from the water-dwelling African marsh rat, it shows adaptations that closely parallel those of the extinct hippopotamuses and manatees of Earth's past. Its head is broad, and its eyes, ears and nostrils are located on bumps on the top so that they can still operate even when the animal is totally submerged. The Mud-Gulper eats only water plants, which it scoops up with its wide mouth or scrapes up from the mud with its tusks. Its body is long, and its hind feet are fused to form a flipper, giving it a seal-like appearance. Even though it is very clumsy out of the water, it spends much of its time on mud banks, where it breeds and rears its young in noisy colonies at the water's edge. The Night Stalker, a large, ferocious, pack-hunting, flightless, leaf-nosed bat from Batavia. Once other vertebrates had established themselves on the islands, a new family of ground-dwelling predatory bats arose. These creatures walk on their front legs, on what would, in the case of a flying bat, be its wings. Their hind legs and feet are still used for grasping, but now fall forward to hang down below their chin. As the bats locate their prey purely by echolocation, their ears and nose flaps have developed at the expense of their eyes, which are now atrophied. The largest and most fearsome of these creatures is the Night Stalker. 1.5 meters tall, it roams screeching and screaming through the Batavian forests at night in packs. They prey indiscriminately on other mammals and reptiles, attacking them with their ferocious teeth and claws. The Night Glider, a small nocturnal arboreal gliding musteline mustelid from the tropical forests of South America. During the day it hangs on trees, disguised against the bark, floating down to feed upon nocturnal insects, frogs and smaller mammals at night. Its method of hunting is to impale its prey on the spines that project from its chest. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe to be notified of future uploads. Also, please don't forget to leave a comment and share this video with anyone who you feel would enjoy it. I'd also like to thank my generous patrons and channel members who can be seen here. This has been the Bewarecast, and I'll catch you next time in part 3. Take care.